Mr and Mrs Whalmby, and they ran the hotel. It was called the Grangeville Hotel. They were both from Manchester. She was quite portly, red-haired. He was very portly, and I think they really enjoyed doing the job, to be honest. I know there was a lot of moans about all the residents, but generally I think they enjoyed it. She was a bit of a hyacinth bouquet, because when she was talking to the guests, she ditched the Manchester accent sort of thing, and then to us, you know, buggers, and she'd swear and things. She'd say, Mr Whalmby would joke, and he'd say, just listen to her now when she talks, just listen to her when she talks. And she would put on the voice and everything. And one day she said, oh, we've bought a cabin cruiser. And if they came in late and he had to open the door after it had been locked, he could be very grumpy, because he was up at the crack of dawn making the breakfast, so he, you know, didn't like to be disturbed. And Mrs Whalmby obviously was getting her beauty sleep in her rollers, Georgette scarf. They accepted me like as part of the family, and you found that the girls you were at school with all worked at hotels, and they worked there for years for the same families. Like in later years, they'd still be friendly with these people that they worked for. So we'd start off probably around Easter time, and you get a coach party coming in for 2 weeks, and the first ones that would come would probably be from Glasgow, and they were like they were deaf and blind. They'd have breakfast, lunch and dinner. And we, because they couldn't hear or see, we learnt the sign language. Oh yeah, there was one called Ellie, I think she was called. I used to go in and just sit with her, just talking with her. It used to amuse me, because you get like coach parties coming from, like, the Glasgow ones would call you hen, and then the next fortnight they'd be like from Birmingham, so then you'd be duck. And then you got the ones from Manchester, and then you'd be, chuck. And then the ones from like Lancashire and places, you'd be me old cocker. So we used to joke and say, oh, well, are we hens or ducks or cockers this week? Every other day there'd be a trip out somewhere. Yeah. And then they were quite happy with just a stroll along the promenade, and there used to be like a lot of like stalls selling clothes and shoes and that along the Morecambe promenade, and just like mooching about, we called it, and going shopping for rock. Everybody had a stick of rock when they went home, you know. The hotel was a double hotel, so it was two guest houses knocked into one.
Yes.
There was 30 bedrooms, a huge dining room, and they got a sink and a towel, a little hand towel, and I think there might have been a tiny little bar of soap, and that was it. There was no hairdryers or kettles or heating. There was no central heating in there. Furnishings and things were very minimal, you know. It was all carpet, so it all had to be hoovered. There was no hard floors or anything. Minimal plug sockets, because they didn't want them using hairdryers and irons and things like this. It was 4 floors, so there was the cellar, or the basement. And because it was 2 hotels, Mr and Mrs Whalmby lived in one. They had a lounge and a bedroom, and there was a kitchen there where all the cooking was done. And then the other side of the hotel was the ballroom. And there was a bar in there, a beautiful dance floor, sprung dance floor, and an organ. And then most nights they'd get an organist in to play the organ. And they'd dance, you know, they'd do this old time dancing and things like that. At the back of the thing was the kitchens, and all the food used to go up on one of these dumb waiters. And then the dining room, there was warming ovens where all the food was transferred to, and a lady washing up called Ellen, who was a real character. She could put her hands in boiling water and never bother. 6 staff, and that would probably just be mornings, and then at night time it'd be just me and Angela. And then I worked in the dining room, and I think each hotel mainly had their own design of crockery and their own colour scheme. So theirs was red. The serviettes were all linen, and they all had to be folded in the same way 3 times a day. And the crockery was, I don't think it said Grangeville Hotel on it, but it was, you wouldn't see it anywhere else. And Mr Whalmby did all the cooking downstairs. I think she did a bit of prepping, and then she'd be like front of house mainly and like to go around and ask if the meal was okay afterwards. Indeed. And me and Angela, the daughter, we were waiting on. So you got to know these people. You were there 3 times. We were virtually with them all day long for 2 weeks. So in those days it was all cash, you know, and it was, everybody was be slipping your tips, you know. There's a lot of money going, exchanging hands. And it was always a big thing. All the staff used to stand on the front waving them cheerio when they went. You know, they must have felt like they were just coming back to a home from home almost, because they'd come for year in, year out. The same staff, probably asked for the same room, and it was the same food. And they went to the same places. Quite easily pleased in those days, I think. I don't think we cope with it nowadays. We opened Easter time, and one of the menus was ice cream in a little stainless steel dish with a flake in and a trickle of raspberry sauce on top. So all the stuff came out from last year, you know, the raspberry sauce and the flakes and everything out the cupboard from last year. I'm there giving these things, thinking, oh, that's nice, they've put some chocolate sprinkles on. And I looked down and these chocolate sprinkles were moving. And I looked closely and they're all weevils coming out the flakes. So I took them back. I said, Mrs Whalmby, there's all weevils. She says, oh, it's okay, we won't harm you, they won't harm you. Okay.
So you said that.
Yes. And the coach drivers were always quite, they always didn't have to pay. They always came and had a nice room, and it was free for them, and you know, they were treated like God. So give him extra sausage. But there was never any food leftovers, like the bread and butter that they didn't eat just went in the fryer and it was served as fried bread the next morning, and the potatoes that they didn't eat were salvaged and made into hash browns or you know, sautéed for lunch or something like that. It's probably about 5 or 6 o'clock, I can't remember, when they ate. They were already waiting outside the door for you to open the dining room door so they could come in. And yeah, if you could ring the gong, it was just a bit of fun, you know. You'd make a bit of a fuss. Woo! And they were big with the masons. I think he was the Grand Master. And so we used to do a lot of charitable events, like dinners, and all the money that was the profits that were made would go to charity. And that was quite nice. And Mr and Mrs Whalmby, I must say, were very, very generous. She'd always be coming in with stuff for me. I was out shopping today and I saw this and I thought you'd like it. I used to get the sun at night, so everybody used to love sitting outside the front of the hotel before dinner. And it was lovely and warm and it was white and it reflected the heat. So we all sat there, and then you'd get all this traffic from the power station would be going, and everybody would be tooting and waving, and all the residents would be waving to the blokes as they go past, you know, just having a bit of fun and everything. And, yeah, used to be a bit silly, a bit giddy. We were a bit giddy.